All right, Robert. So today we're going to talk about how not to lose friends on Facebook. We're going to talk about Facebook etiquette, do's and don'ts. So what are some of your? I mean, do you have kind of a number one philosophy when it comes to engaging in any kind of like either political or social justice oriented conversation?
Normally, I mean, I'll put out what I'm going to put out, if it's a social justice post or whatever. But once the discussion starts, if there are those who are on the other side, if I don't know them, I ask them sometimes just, why are you on this post other than to scream at me? If I do know them, then I'm saying, look, we've known each other for X number of period of time, whatever. Let's keep it civil. Let's not get personal. If you disagree, disagree. And if you're going to come at me with stuff, can you support the facts?
That's a
I
good
can
point.
give
Yeah.
you, and that's the journalism background. I can give you the reference if I say I'm saying such and such. Well, I've got this from AP and someplace else. I try, because that's what I use for my information in general. I try to use some of the more credibly known neutral news outlets: AP, NPR, BBC, Reuters. Because I think most of the others are, they do skew one way. CNN and MSNBC far one way, Fox the other way, and I'm not even going to get into the fringe groups like Breitbart and Politico and stuff. But I ask people, try and keep it civil, and remember that if you don't agree with one of my friends' comments, they're still one of my friends. And I remember something I try and keep in mind is years ago when I was in high school, I was thinking about having a party. I think it was when I was leaving for California. And I was thinking of having a party, and I was talking to a buddy of mine saying, I don't know, because I have this group of friends from music, and this group of friends from this, and this group of friends, which group, whatever. And he's like, Dal, there's one common denominator to all of them, and that's you. So do you think that just because this group is the group you play music with and this group is the group you play baseball, they're going to fight? No. They may not become best friends, but they're probably going to be fine. And who knows, because of whatever commonality is going on and why they're friends with you to begin with, they might also strike up a friendship with each other, at least for the party. So like, okay, I learned that at 17. And I try and say, look, if you're going to bang on one of my friends, remember, he is, first of all, one of my friends besides being a human being. And there's got to be a reason. If you're one of my friends, then there's got to be a reason why that person is too. That's that same kind of commonality. So try and keep it civil. That's
Well,
what
I
I
think I think being yeah, I mean, I think being civil is important, and the name calling thing is really unnecessary. I mean, I think I can safely say that in all my conversations, no matter how emotional or excited or riled up or whatever that I've gotten, I've never in years actually called someone a name.
yeah.
I might say, I think you're inaccurate. Or even if you were to say something like, hey, we're disagreeing on something here, or we're seeing something, from different viewpoints. Here's a suggestion, here's a link to something. And I've seen that done. And sometimes, I'll go, okay, thanks. Let me research this a little bit further,
Mm-hmm.
because I think so often with a lot of these issues, people aren't aware of the history. I mean, even with something as it might even seem kind of ridiculous with Aunt Jemima, for instance. That's one of my favorite analogies, because you have Aunt Jemima, and most people who are under 40, have grown up with this smiling, black woman on the pancake mix box, who reminds me of my mom, very just kind of nice looking lady. And
Right.
they have no idea that the previous images going all the way back to the early 1900s were very derogatory.
Sure.
They were disgusting. They reinforced racial stereotypes. And once I tell
But
them
their response is, the woman who's the thing is like a million now because of that. It's like,
exactly, which I have a response to, I said, yes, it is true that I think it was Nancy Green, I think was the woman's name, back in the 20s or 30s. She went and, like Ronald McDonald used to do, you go to McDonald's, there's Ronald McDonald in the flesh, right? Well, she would go out to these fairs and events and be Aunt Jemima, right? And she got paid a lot of money to do that. But at the same time, the advertisements and the way it was promoted was she was still promoting this mammy image, which is a very negatively stereotypical depiction of Black people, which was the same depiction you saw in Hollywood. You know, with the characters in Hollywood, those, yeah, they were getting paid, but at the same time,
that's exactly where I was going to go. That
you know, they were still reinforcing. You know, it's like if I grew, and the problem is that for a lot of people, that was the only Black people you saw on screen. So it's kind of like if I grew up just watching the Beverly Hillbillies, and that's all I ever saw of white people. I might think, oh, well, that's how white people are.
They all are.
Hillbillies. So once I can explain that and actually give them actual photographs of these disgusting derogatory ads, then they go, oh, I had no idea.
Right.
So I think rather than just saying, you know, you're ignorant and you're a moron and all this other stuff.
Getting you ignorant slut.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you just come armed with facts. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's one of my, and we're talking about Facebook etiquette, so I don't want to get too far off the course here.
Well, it's all right. You can.
But one of my pet peeves among the list of things that are going on with our current administration is that tactic of campaigning and running things, where it's Sleepy Joe and Crooked Hillary and Pocahontas. It's like that's like fourth grade playground bullshit.
Now, in all fairness, they do call him Bunker Boy and the Orange Man. So, I mean, both sides can get into this kind of playground.
Well, I mean, I think
it detracts from your argument, though.
But I think, I will sometimes kind of offhandedly refer to him as the Orange Menace, but never in something where I'm really, I'm a person of importance who's being interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And I have this responsibility of being the leader of the free world. I'm not there. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea of that kind of thing, and people in general, like in politics, and using that kind of mudslinging stuff, there's always been mudslinging, but now it's at a level with the name calling. Like you said, it's like name calling. If you don't like this guy's record or his policy, then attack that. But really, Sleepy Joe? Mm-hmm. I mean, what is that about?
Well, but you speak to another point. I think that, and we're both journalism, have journalism backgrounds. Back in the day, we're dating ourselves. News was objective. Yes, you had editorial columns and things like that and commentary, but for the most part, if you picked up the Los Angeles Times or whatever, it was, or you turned on the 5 o'clock news, they were giving you the facts without all the the sidebars and the jokes and the snarky comments. Mm-hmm. But it's become so tolerated and so normalized, and it's even encouraged, because I think, just like our news outlets, it's almost like, who can be more shocking, who can be funnier and snarkier and more entertaining. Because if you just come out and report the news, oh, that's boring. If you just give me the facts, I need all the melodrama around it.
It's got to be about titillation and getting the ratings and stuff. And it's another thing I try and do on Facebook is like, back to the same thing about, don't sensationalize something just to make a point if you can't support it with something, and don't attack someone, getting back to what we were just talking about, just for the sake of it sounds exciting and stirring up the pot. I remember doing, I worked on the Democratic National Convention in LA back in 2000 for CNN. And it was already at that point where CNN was starting to go where they are now, where they're just far left and out of their minds. And some of the response from some of the people, behind the scenes would be like, well, we're just kind of combating Fox because they're far right and out of their minds on the right side. And it's like, two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, it's one of the oldest sayings, cliches, whatever in the world. And that's something I also try to do with people on Facebook. Like, okay, like with the thing in Kenosha, whether the person who got, and you and I were talking about this off air a little while ago, but there's one of my friends is saying that apparently the guy who got shot, Rosenbaum, had some sort of criminal background. And I won't go into specifics of what they said because it's unsubstantiated. But it's a pretty serious thing. Mm-hmm. And I can't find any substantiation on it. But the point is that they were laughing about something, about the fact that this kid went and shot some people. Whether you agree with the protesters, and we don't know whether the people who got shot were, peaceful protesters or part of that group that's just going around just trying to disrupt everything and make everything look bad, just using an excuse to go crazy themselves. We don't know whether these people were part of either, which group they were part of. So, but either way, did anything they do, did anything they said in terms of what their movement is about, deserve getting shot for by a 17-year-old kid too? But I mean, either way, even if it was an older, where do you draw that line? I mean, the fact that he did this, and then we're talking about how, well, the kid shouldn't have been there, and he had an illegal thing, and he came in there, well, but the guy he shot was a criminal. Or the police, shot a guy who had a record. Well,
what's
two wrongs don't make a right here, dude. I mean, there's extremes, and then I think somebody having a record who's not coming at you, with the gun right at the moment, there's probably other ways to disarm them.
And like you said earlier, the shooter doesn't know that they have a record anyway.
Exactly, but it's justification.
Some
try and say, well, I didn't agree with the movement. They shouldn't have been there. And then, yay, go Kyle. Well, why? Oh, by the way, it says here that guy had a. Well, wait a minute. How does that justify? Yeah. So, and you and I have talked many times, and I've used recently on someone talking about the idea of going into a situation and how things are different for Black Americans as opposed to white Americans when dealing with the authorities and the police. And two of my favorite quotes of all time is one.
The Family Show now. This is a family show. Be careful when you're quoting Richard Pryor.
Yes, I know. I got banged on that before. And I'm like, dude, it's in quotes. Okay. Where Richard Pryor talking about being arrested, and he goes, I am reaching in my pocket because I don't want to be no blank accident.
Mm-hmm.
White people don't understand that. In large part that's that's what's going to happen. And then I've talked about my favorite is Franklin Najai.
Mm-hmm.
He said he got arrested in Los Angeles for being blank on a sunny day.
Well, and that's the
kicker for me about the line where he goes, "What can I do? I was guilty."
Yes. Well, the other thing too, about that, even, and I do believe that most police are good people. I've worked with the police. I'm not being critical of, I'm not blanketing police as all being bad. There's a certain substantial portion, I think, that are, but you could say that about any profession. There's bad plumbers, there's bad dentists, whatever. But the problem is that it just takes one bad apple or one bad cop to create a lot of damage. Just like most airline pilots are good pilots, but the one pilot that crashes the 747 and kills 400 people, so the responsibility on police departments to have responsible, non-racist cops, non-sexist, whatever you want to call it, is important. But the thing is that for all of the documented cases or all of the George Floyds, there's so many cases that don't even get reported. And then secondly, police have a certain amount of parameters, that they can work within as far as why they stop you, how they treat you, that aren't ever, unless they have their cams on, so there's all these cases. It's just like women getting assaulted. There's a certain amount of data on how many rapes that are occurring, but then there's so many that don't even get reported.
Right. And they may not become full rapes, but there's still an attack.
There's still sexual assault. So, there's this whole range of things. So my point being is that sometimes it's just like with racism. Sometimes people feel that you're only racist if you wear a hood and burn a cross on somebody's lawn. They don't understand all the other layers and aspects and subtleties and covert versus overt and all that stuff. But I think once in the Facebook realm, I think, unfortunately, here's maybe our second bullet point is respect the limitations of Facebook. Because sometimes, when you're going back and forth on a thread and you're talking about a very complicated subject, I suggest to people, why don't you take this offline if you really want to get into it? Because it's very easy to misinterpret a meme.
That's the biggest problem with that kind of communication anyway. Same thing with texting and email. And I hate to admit it, but I've become an emoticon guy, only because I have a very sarcastic sense of humor. So if I don't put the little smiley face there, people might think I'm serious about something. And if you can't hear the inflection in someone's voice, it's just in black and white on a written paper or screen or whatever,
Right.
then you don't know. So you have to somehow indicate, I am now making a joke.
I am now.
This is not,
You have like a sign that you can hold up or something.
well, that's what the emoticons have
Yeah,
become.
exactly.
The smiley face or the wink or whatever it is. Because you can't tell the inflection and how serious or intent, whatever. And the other problem is, especially in a thread, you respond to something and I may read it an hour later and then I go to respond to it. Well, in the meantime, there's been 12, 14 comments in between. So someone else is going like, wait, is Bob responding to something that Kevin said an hour ago? And are they having a conversation? And not thinking, well, Bob might have gone off to like, do a job or something and come back and read it later. But also even in the midst of, even if it's happening kind of in real time, comments can go flying. So a lot of comments come up in between. So you lose that kind of ping pong of the dialogue because there's too many things in between, and you look at it and go, who is he talking to? Who is he responding to? Which comment is that about? And that is tough. And that's another reason I agree, telling people, take it offline. Or very often I'm asking someone, can we just like get on the phone? There used to be a time when these wonderful devices we have, we used to make phone calls before we cut movies on them.
Right.
Because then first of all, I get tired of typing, especially on the phone with just the thumbs. I swear my thumb is going to be like 18 sizes bigger and be strong enough to lift a building someday. It's better to do it. It's quicker, it's easier, but you also have that rapport, the back and forth. So that can be difficult. I do want to go back, if I can, just for a minute, to something you had said right before. Two things I had issue with the comment when we're talking about good cop, bad cop, and good people in general, bad apples. I have an unbelievable respect for what the police do. I have a lot of associations with people who are in my county. We have sheriffs, know and like and are friendly with a lot of them. And every day they go out the door and you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
I know some of the stories from being around them and hanging out with them, but certain things that have happened. And it's just like, certainly lucky to be alive department for a lot of them. And I have a good friend from high school who's now retired, luckily. So he lived as the thing, the tagline in that show, Hill Street Blues, used to be the one commander say, hey, let's be careful out there. We want to come home at the end of the day. And I get that. Now my friend's son is in it. So he went through it himself. And now he's like, okay, I got to worry every night about getting that phone call. But so I know and feel my brothers in blue. My only problem is two things with what you were saying. First of all, they are held to a higher standard. They have to be. Because we're entrusting them with our safety and in some cases our rights. So they're the ones that you call. When there's an issue going down, if there's a dispute and you want some sort of mediation or control, whatever that, they're the ones you call and you depend on to be objective and follow the rule of law. So when they go off, that's almost tantamount to me to when the priest gets caught with the altar boy. It's like, well, you people are not that's maybe extreme. Even just when a religious figure has caught having an affair, even if it's heterosexual, they have an affair. Well, everybody has in all walks of life, right? The CEO of Walgreens isn't the one I'm going to for moral leadership.
Don't pick on Walgreens now.
I'm sorry.
I know what you're saying though.
But yeah, I mean, there's that's the thing. They are held to a higher standard, kind of like like you said, the airline pilots, the same thing. And the only other thing is that unfortunately it is case by case for the most part, but we have found that for whatever reason, because stuff flows from the top, if you get a commander of a certain precinct or in a certain district that is a certain way, and then they've either by luck or somehow some sort of design over the years managed to get a number of officers under them who kind of adhere to that. Most famous one I can think of off the top of my head would be the Rampart District in Los Angeles. After a while, it just got known that was a very racist department.
Toxic, yeah.
It started from the top with the commander, and then everybody under him did that. What's that?
I remember that. Yeah, I remember Rampart got investigated and
and they finally found out. But for the years, that's the kind of thing that led to the Franklin Najai comment and all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. If you lived in Los Angeles and if you happen to be in that area, whether you live there or not, although you could also have the situation, and people think this is just a made up story where, you know, the 18-year-old kid who's a straight A student and on the track team is out in an area, for those people who don't know, LA, Canoga Park used to be a pretty decent suburb area, and he's jogging and he gets pulled over because he's a black man running.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets treated differently. It was like, he's a kid who's jogging. He's, you know, you don't know anything about him. That kind of situation, mentality of where it starts at the top can infest a whole department. So then it becomes a thing, I think, in some cases where it's not just one or two bad guys. I had an incident when I was a kid with a policeman like that. And there were a couple of different incidents in our area with this same policeman. And my mom, God rest her, man, she'd go off on a tear, you know, if you got around and did something wrong like that. So she had talked to and complained a number of times to the local precinct. So they ended up transferring him. Ironically, we found out later he got transferred to an area where he was going to fit in real well. So that department out in that other area just got another guy who's wearing blue instead of white, you know, and he's got a hat instead of a hood. And so now he's there. And again, that kind of culture was nurtured by the commander or whatever, and that kind of thing can happen. So that's why I think we got to be careful sometimes about looking, well, where does it stem from? Is it just one guy, a rogue guy by himself, or is he part of a thing? And then that infests the whole community. Why is the community angry about the police in their area? Well, if they live in the Rampart District of LA, there's a reason. It's not random, you know. So I think that has to be sometimes taken into account for.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember there was a police officer who had retired, and it was a white police officer who did a interview and said he was told I think he was back east somewhere, he was told to specifically profile young African-American men. And it was like, if he didn't come back to the station every day with some reports or tickets or whatever, arrests, then he was criticized.
Yeah.
So I totally agree. I mean, I think I always say, you know, don't just treat the symptom, find out what the disease is, you know, because very often it's just like with transferring people. Well, let's just transfer them somewhere else, or let's just fire them. Well, okay, once you fire somebody, it's not like they evaporate. You know, it's like moving the homeless from one neighborhood to another. It's like they don't disappear. They're just over there now.
Right? Exactly. Hey, they're out of my wood, so.
Exactly. So which brings me to our next bullet point here.
Nice segue.
Nice segue, which is, I call it, used to be called drunk dialing, but I guess it's drunk Facebooking. And this is where, you know, you're upset about something, you know, you stop off at the bar and have 4 or 5 drinks, you know, on your way home. Then you get home and then somebody says something on Facebook and then you go off, right? And you probably don't even remember what you said or what you posted. But then the next day you learn that you've been fired because you've gone viral, you know, with your comments about whatever group or, you know, whatever you're talking about. So I always tell people, you know, my rule of thumb is don't put anything on Facebook that you would have no problem with the entire world seeing. You know, because so often, you know, and people can screenshot it, you know this, right?
Yeah,
you know, they take a little shot and you might have deleted it 5 minutes later, but it's there for the world to see. Yeah. So
that's true. Like you said, it's kind of like the drunk calling, but it's worse because if you drunk call somebody, I'm calling you at 2 a.m. and you can hang up and then it's done. And the next morning you call me back and I said, I did what? But in a social media aspect, then like Facebook, then yeah, it's going out to the world and it's viral and someone can, you know, let it live forever. The other aspect I think of that's the biggest problem I have with it, is that it's the anonymity that suddenly makes someone really brazen. Things that you would never say in a group, especially a group of people you don't know. If you were all sitting in a circle in a room having a discussion about it, things you would never say there when you have to look at the person face to face and have maybe interacted with the person even a little bit to realize he's a decent person or not or whatever. On something like Facebook, you can be as you're in your basement, you know, at 2 a.m. in your PJs. You can be as bold and brazen and strong as you want. because of the anonymity. At first, even if someone does know what town you live in, they probably don't know exactly where. And then if you're in, Baltimore and you're writing something and some guy in Seattle gets upset, what you can do? Hop a plane and come and yell at you and, hit
So
you
knock
with
at the
a
door,
stick.
right?
It
I'm that
was?
guy I said, there's a knock at the door. Hello.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
I'm that guy that you were just called the
Or
moron.
even I'm not the guy you were talking about, but I read what you said and I don't agree. And I take offense with it, so that is, I think, really fed the whole problem of people being able to get away with certain outlandish things. And I think what you said certainly is taken into account. That, first of all, the heat of the moment. And that's why they call things crimes of passion. And whether there's something like an alcohol involved, that just heightens, that just doubles down on it. But something at a moment that you can always take back. And it's funny because I was thinking when you're talking about that, well, texting you can never take back. At least with Facebook you can delete it, but then, like you said, someone could have already screened it, screen scraped it, and it lives forever. But yeah, there's a criteria that I often try and keep in mind. If I'm posting this, is it something that I would have any problem with my parents reading or my kid reading?
Mm-hmm.
They may not understand all the layers of what I'm talking about in a particular subject matter, or understand where I'm coming from in terms of all of my background. My parents don't know everything that happened to me, certainly after I was out of the house at 18. They may not understand everything, but in the way I'm presenting it and the way I'm phrasing it, would they have a problem?
Mm-hmm.
And would I have a problem saying some of the things in front of my kid? Now, of course, now my kid's 18, so it's a little bit easier in terms of he understands more. And certainly language barrier isn't quite as bad, but there's that kind of bar.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are our tips for our viewers for today. How not to lose friends on Facebook.
Well, can I add one more?
All right, Bob.
Oh my God, really? Wow.
Of course you can.
Only because you and I were talking about this offline, off air, whatever. We were talking about this before, that I've had a number of occasions where either one topic, or usually it's a topic that comes up a number of times or something similar around it. Let's say social unrest or politics or something comes up, and you have a friend that you've known for a long time, maybe not even hanging out with them recently, because you were like one friend of mine, friend from college. College was years ago. And you're like, okay. And the talks just starts getting too combative. And I have on a number of occasions asked people, look, we're not going to convince each other, we're not going to sway each other to our way of thinking. You're not going to get me to the dark side, and I'm not going to get you to become a Jedi. So why don't we just have an agreement that we will not touch on certain subjects like this, whether it's just across the board, nothing political, nothing social, or just one thing in particular that, like, okay, let's not talk about Trump because we're just too combative that, and then we can leave that subject away and never get into it here, and keep talking. Like I told you before, my one friend said, let's keep talking about, girls we knew in college, classic rock, and the camping trips we did when we were or something like that, and what's going on with our kids, and keep everything out of it. And often that's enough, and people will say, okay, I'm hip, sure. For the sake of the friendship, let's just do that. And then every once in a while you have someone who can't. And you only like the old adage, if you don't like something that's on TV, turn it off, or someone's braiding on the phone, hang up. The only thing you can do sometimes is unfriend someone. And I've done that a couple of times. I've given them, for lack of a better word, warnings, notice, dude, we had an agreement, you're not abiding, and this can't keep going on. Please abide to our agreement, or I'm going to have to, cut you loose. A couple of times I've had to do it, and I'm sure I will again. But at least you try, I think, to start off with saying, okay, we don't agree. So what's the old saying? Let's agree to disagree. And let's not just clog up our airways or electronic waves or whatever you want to call it with this back and forth, because it's going nowhere. And it's just getting people upset. It's getting me upset. I don't want to have to turn on my social media and look to see, what my friend's kid did in college. That's great. And then I get to see in the comment section or whatever, so-and-so comment on your thing and saying, Bob, you ignorant slut, just because, not because I had one idea that's, you keep following this one thing and one guy, and my guy is great. And I was like, come on, really? So that's an etiquette thing that I try and has worked sometimes with people, and other people done the same to me. Sometimes it doesn't, but in the end, your option is, okay, unfriend. That way they won't see the post, and you don't have that issue. Life's too short for that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, and hopefully, in the case of some friendships, maybe you can circle back, and after time, over time, I've had that happen just in my own personal life, where I might have gotten into it with somebody, not on Facebook, just in general, and then 5 years later, it's like I don't even remember what the argument was about, because fortunately, I had enough of a foundation for that friendship that it's kind of weathered that particular storm, so to speak.
I'm always hopeful that it can circle back maybe, and we can find growth. But it also reminds you that sometimes, the relationship was like that line from The Big Chill. We don't know each other that well. A long time ago, we knew each other for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. You don't know anything about me anymore. So to some of them, it's like, oh, I thought I wanted to be friends with so-and-so because I remember from college and we both were going after the same girl and we struck up a friendship. Now it's like, I don't know who this person has become. Maybe that is who he's become. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that in my life. I wouldn't have him in my immediate circle if he lived close by and just hanging out and coming to party with that. So why do I need to worry about it just because it's on social media? So, I hope that he can come back and say, whatever, and I can maybe meet him halfway or whatever, and we get back to that other aspect of the old days.
Right.
But if not, oh well.
Yep. All right. Well,
it's funny. I always tell people I don't have enough time to get together with the people who I really want to, as much as we could, even before the pandemic. There's not enough time in your life when you're working and raising a kid and to go and you live now further away. I don't have enough time to be able to get together with some of my good friends that I really want to see. So I'm not going to waste time on someone.
Well, I think it's maximizing your time, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to feel personal. I mean, it's just like there's 24 hours in a day, and people have priorities. They have things that are, kind of important. So it might be some people quit their jobs to spend time with their kids, because that's become a priority. And life is an evolutionary process. So who you are at 20 can be different than who you are at 40 and who you are at 60. But I think maximizing your time to do the things that are important to you, I think we all should do that to some extent, as long as it does.
And believe me, and I'm the first to understand that it's not always it's not that my friend Mike doesn't want to see me. He's a judge, and he's got his parents are now in an assisted living thing, and he's got his kid, daughter in college, another daughter with a kid, and so time is really short. So, but he makes an effort, even if it's just a phone call now and again, whatever, we do that. But my point was is that you can't always do it for other reasons. So why waste the time, what little time you have, with something that's just not going to be beneficial? I'm not saying that
result either.
My friends say they're not all like-minded, but if someone's just problematic and not respecting the idea that, hey, let's set this kind of parameter up, which I think is completely reasonable. And if you can't respect that, then okay, you're not respecting me. So why am I wasting time?
Right. So. All right. Well, that's a good way to end it, Robert. In next episode, we will talk about some other hot topic that will blow people's minds.
That's what we do.
That's what we're here for, to blow your mind. All right.
Okay.